Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. We're concluding, this is part 2 of our Porsche 356 Speedster tranche of work. And we've done all sorts of work to this car. It came in for a fuel leak and a recommissioning. We've bled the braking system, we've freed off all the brakes, we've replaced every fuel line on the car. I'm going to be doing some final tuning and balancing. Not quite a Lamborghini V12 this, an air-cooled flat 4, but with 2 twin-choke carburetors. So this is heady stuff for air-cooled VW Porsche circles, really. 1 choke per cylinder. So I'm going to use my trusty hosepipe and screwdriver to balance the carburetors, both volume of air-wise and mixture of fuel and air going into the engine-wise. Make sure that's all tickety-boo, and then we're going to just take the car for a run and make sure that it's performing beautifully. It should be an absolutely, for its genre, it should be a spectacularly good car to drive this, because they weigh nothing, but the engine in this is sort of souped up. It's not the original engine. The original engine is out of the car. Obviously, it's precious. There becomes a point when a matching numbers car, if anything goes wrong with the engine, a missed gear change, over revving, whatever, it's a big problem if it blows up and does terminal damage to the crankcase or whatever. So it's got a substitute engine that's been fitted at some point. It's souped up. It's round about 100 brake horsepower. And I think, I'm digging deep here, but I think the Speedsters came in either 75 or 90 brake horsepower, so it's a super speedster, so as I say, we've carefully brought the engine back to life. We saw in the first video, I very carefully checked for the feeling, the resistance of the engine, whether it was in the right way, in the right places, and it was. So it's passed muster. We've rejuvenated the whole thing. This particular car has had quite a well-known and widespread modification to cars of the late 50s and early 60s. This is a 58 car, and that is that the front brakes in particular were changed. They've been upgraded from the standard drums to disc brakes. I haven't road tested this car yet, but I'll be curious to see what the brake pedal feels like, because what happened with drum brakes was that you had what was called a self-wrapping effect. Nothing to do with spontaneous staccato, people breaking into staccato spontaneous songs. In this case, self-wrapping means that the brake drum was revolving in the direction of the wheel, and the shoe inside it that pressed against it pivoted like that as the drum went round. And so it self-wrapped into the drum, whereas if you reverse the car, it would actually tend to push away from the drum. And that gave you a self-servoing effect on the brakes, which you don't get with discs, because when the pads push against the disc, there's no self-wrapping effect. The disc doesn't draw them in particularly. Result of that is manufacturers started to fit more and more brake servos, vacuum-assisted or hydraulic-assisted brake servos. This car hasn't got one on, but it has got the disc brake conversion. So I'm going to see, there are plenty of disc-braked cars that have been made without servos, particularly fast road or racing cars. But I'd be just curious to see what the pedal feels like on this. The Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing stroke Roadster series, for example, went through various generations of braking changes. And as they came in with a different drum system and then went on to discs in 1992, brake discs, they eventually had to up the servo ratio to 4:1 from 2:1 originally. So that is to say, for the disc braked cars, the Teves servo on the 300 SL Gullwing actually gave you 4:1. So for every pound of pressure you put on the brake pedal, the servo would apply 4 pounds to the braking system, the calipers, and that gave you a feel of not having to push too hard on the brake pedal. That's the whole point. But up to 4 times. And modern cars, particularly, dare I say it, German cars, can be over-servoed, what I call over-servoed. It's very flashy. It feels great when you touch the brake pedal and you're nearly into the windscreen. But in the real world, particularly if the accelerator's a bit heavy, it can cause problems driving. It can cause particularly at parking speeds, it can be too eager to help you and actually cause the brakes to slam on effectively just by touching the pedal slightly. So there's all sorts of arguments for and against what is the ideal brake pedal pressure, but it can be too heavy or it can be too light. It would be absolutely shocking, for example, to disconnect the brake servo on a modern car, either not feed it, disconnect the vacuum feed from the engine or whatever, and drive the car. I suspect people would be driving into the back of other cars because the effectiveness of the braking system is identical, but the pedal effort required to produce the same result is off the scale. So I'm very curious to see how this engine pulls. It should be a little gem now. Yeah, without further ado, we'll get on with tuning the engine and then we'll take the car out for its road test. So we're getting close to being able to crank this over and try and get a tune out of it now. I'm going to take the air filters off because it makes life much more easy to get at the carburetors and see what's going on. So we'll do that now. Just a case of unscrewing these screws. This is German engineering at its best. We have 5 screws holding the air filter on here. I suspect 2 would suffice on an SU carburetor on a British car of the same era, but anyway, here we are. So we take this off and then I'll just start having an assessment. There we are. I've got it worried. It's wobbling on top of the carburetor. Always a good sign. There we are. So we lift that off, place it in an oven at 200 degrees C for 20 minutes. Right, now the first thing I'm going to do, this crossbar here, which goes behind the fan housing, is what the accelerator works, and then that translates into carburetor movement or throttle opening. So a basic check I'm going to do is to, and it could have been like this for years, so this is not something that's necessary to make the engine run. This is nice to have and fine tuning. We just want to make sure the crossbar actuates both carburetors in the same way. Right, so on this carburetor, we have initial movement right from the get-go on the carburetor. And in fact, that link is, yeah, there is a bit of play in that, but it's okay. You can see the throttle butterfly shaft actually moving there. That is very slightly jacking the carburetor shaft off its seat. Now let me just check that this one's doing the same. Ah, no. You can see there is play in the linkage there. And if I do that, it's not even moving the linkage. If I press a bit further, it starts to move. So we've got an imbalance there. There's quite a bit of play in the ball joints on the linkage, but they'll be all right. I shall get my trusty spanners and get this adjusted. Okay, so I've slackened off this nut at the top and this nut at the bottom. One's a right hand and one's a left hand thread. So when you twist this, it actually alters the length of the linkage. Clever stuff, hey? So we need it about there, and there we are. So as I move that side, this side instantly opens. So that is just right, actually. Just that, that was all it needed. That tiny little adjustment. And then we tighten those up And that means that both throttles are actually balanced now. So there we go. And we need to make sure that this is in the middle of its travel. There we go. And then tighten that up. There we have it. Beautifully balanced throttle linkage. Ferrari 355s, if you happen to own a Ferrari 355, when you're running the engine, if you just touch the accelerator, if it sounds a bit rough, the engine, for a nanosecond before you pick the revs up, that's because the throttle linkage on a Ferrari 355 is out of sync for both banks. So it's again just a tiny adjustment so that both butterflies open at exactly the same time. Your 355 will thank you for it when you're trying to work the clutch in traffic. It will save wear on the clutch and it'll sound sweeter and be better to drive. Just a tip there. Okay, so now we're going to see if we can get a tune out of the engine, and I'll use my trusty hose pipe and screwdriver to, well, that's assuming everything works and it bursts into life. We've left the tap on to try and get fuel up to the pump. So I'm hoping after a few cranks this bursts into life and it will be a fairly simple job. This is not a Lamborghini Miura, as I've done in many previous videos using the screwdriver and hose pipe. This is a rather simpler engine. I'm hoping we can get this, because the owner was complaining about it running roughly at low revs. I'm hoping we can get it absolutely peachy, assuming everything else works and it actually fires. We've got ignition, we've got fuel. Hopefully we'll be burning and turning. Okay, so we've done all that. We've got access to the carburetors now. I'm going to sit in the car. Normally, to start an engine like this, there is no choke as such that you pull out. So you press the accelerator several times and tiny jets called accelerator pumps pump fuel into the inlet tract in the carburetors. That's how you start these Ferraris, Lamborghinis of a certain age from cold, by pumping them to get some neat fuel in the system. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to let the engine build up oil pressure a little bit, and I'd be happy if it cranks over. It might fire instantly, but I'd be happy if it cranks over just to get a bit of oil going before we fire it up. Anything could happen now, so let's see. Right, the oil pressure light has gone out. So I'm now going to pump the accelerator a few times and hopefully it will burst into life. This is very encouraging. And again. Ooh. This is quite normal, believe it or not. can already tell the fact that both carburetors are opening at the same time, because it's quite sweet on pickup. Even though it's still cold, there's no lumpiness as the engine picks up. It's quite clean. Both linkages are working exactly together. It's probably many years since it was like that. But I'll now get the trusty hose and screwdriver. We'll wait for it to warm up a bit. I'll tune it, and then we can take it for a run. It's obviously not happy there. That's because it's running weak. I've turned the screw in, and I'm now going to unscrew it until the mixture comes right on that cylinder. There it is. Screwing this one in, and the engine's picking up a bit more, which means the screw is rich. So I want it to go slow again. There we go. Unscrewing the screw now to richen the mixture up. There it is. Same with these. Straight away that one's gone slow. So I'll just unscrew that one. Bit tricky, this one. There we are. And the last one. Well, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The amount of fun is not necessarily directly proportional to the value of the car. In fact, strangely enough, they're quite often opposite. So the really expensive cars, like the F40 or Miura or whatever, do they provide more driving enjoyment than an everyman under £10,000 classic? I know that's a contentious question. Of course they're more thrilling, of course they're more amazing, of course the powertrain is fantastic, but I mean, this is now a very valuable car in its own right, north of £350,000, being a genuine speedster. But you know, it's still mechanically still quite a basic car, and that's good. That's very good. That's the purity of the early Porsches, and Porsches for many years. Yes, and we know it's valuable, as I say, but it's not dynamically crazy. I mean, I don't know what the maximum speed on this car is, 120 miles an hour, something like that. But in terms of fun and feedback, I'm just getting feedback deluxe from everything in this car. The seat of my pants, pardon the expression, but through to the steering wheel, which is just beautifully translating what's going on under the car. It just feels incredibly taut and very modern, actually, very modern. A bit like a sort of German Lotus Elan, really. And no wonder Harry Metcalf loves his Elan so much. They are just fingertip driving sensation. Nothing is over-assisted electrically or mechanically. It's very, as I say, it's all direct. Even the gear change, everything. Nothing is. There's nothing getting in the way of the experience, and this, for that reason alone, this feels absolutely delightful. I'm just warming it up. We're waiting for the oil temperature gauge to start registering. Just here, it's on the way. But yeah, so far so good. Well, this is coming to life really nicely. The suspension is it's a nice compromise. Because the car's light, the suspension doesn't have to be too hard, or too big rather, to work hard to check all the weight that's floating about. It's very sensibly, oh my goodness, that's an interesting vehicle. A kit car Kubelwagen, how appropriate. And the oil temperature is now registering on the gauge. So let's just drop it down and open the taps. That little flat 4 engine. I suspect it's redlined at 4,500, so I'm down to about 1,800 there. Oh, that's great. This is bags of fun. This is quick. This car is quick. In the 1950s, this must have been amazing to drive. Okay, we know the engine's a little bit souped up, but nevertheless, it's just so, it's so alive, it's so vibrant. Of course they look beautiful, the Speedsters, but is this the other reason why they are so venerated and so loved? The fact that they just dance to your tune? Yes, it has to be. The brake pedal needs a bit of a shove, even by 1950s standards. I'm sure if I did really push the pedal, it would stop very quickly. Yeah, and it's got plenty of response, but because of that front disc setup, it's made the pedal just a little heavier for the reasons I explained before, but it's still acceptable. It's fine. I know if I really wanted to, I could brake hard in this car and quickly. But oh, it's gorgeous. Very good fun. I think he's going to be very happy with this car. It's pulling very sweetly. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe. It does help, and we'll be back with something else very soon.